I wish I had more wishes. I wish for righteous visions. I wish for 100-gallon tanks full of tropical fishes.
What's up, my wizards? Dev, SVMTG plays down there. I've got a fairly highly anticipated deck today. I'm surprised it's kind of in the top 10 most anticipated decks that I've talked about so far. This is Simic Flash, and it definitely has its fan base, and has for years. This is a fairly popular deck when you can play it, and you can definitely make a very strong argument for this deck in this format. What is this? I always like to tell you before I just launch into the deck list. Simic Flash is a deck that plays, obviously, a lot of flash creatures, and throughout history it can play a couple of different ways. It can play like a tempo deck, disrupting what your opponent wants to do while also playing small creatures, chipping in damage, and stopping them from doing stuff. We're sort of doing that, but we also have another philosophy. Some Simic Flash decks will play way more like straight-up control decks. This is what we're trying to emulate in this build. You know, all of our creatures can be played at instant speed, so can all but one of our spells in the deck, and just the one copy of that one spell too. So we have like 8 different removal elements in the deck. We've got something like 14 different counterspell type effects in the deck. So we play very much like a control deck. It's sort of an aggro deck for control players, or I guess even maybe a control deck for aggro players. You can put it that way. We go ahead and hit you with the creatures. There's 18 of them. That's a lot of creatures with flash in the format, and there's even more you could play. I just think these are the ones that I think are most important to play. 4 copies of Dimensional Infiltrator so that we have a flash 2-drop creature. And yeah, we have the mana in the mana base to activate his, protect himself ability and exile things off the top. We have the mana for it, but mostly he's a 2-mana, 2-power flash flyer. His stats are amazing. It's exactly what the deck wants. We can play him anytime we want. And yeah, I don't see any reason not to play him. We need a 2-drop with flash that's reliable, and this just has all the things that you'd want it to have, even if you never activate his protection ability there, his actual onboard ability. He's still a really, really good creature, and he gives us a sort of flexibility where we can play like aggro against certain decks, and like control against other decks. Playing this as a blocker, this can be used as removal in the early game. That's pretty cool. Or just playing it at the end of their turn so we can swing in as soon as we untap and draw a card. So, yeah, Dimensional Infiltrator has been pretty darn good so far because he's super flex, Again, even if you never activate his ability, he's fine. 4 copies of Harbinger of the Tide's a no-brainer in the deck. It's either a solid 2-drop creature or a very good 4-drop creature with flash. Either way, when it comes into play, it's going to bounce a guy that's tapped at least, And that works against stuff other than things that have attacked you, namely Jace. If they tapped their Jace and haven't flipped him yet, Harbinger can bring him back to their hand, which is sometimes a relevant situation, Harbinger is just a good turn 4 play to help remove a guy for a turn or two, And if we bounce a guy to their hand, there are definitely times where we can just counter it if they try to play it again. So just lots of versatility in Harbinger. He is a dream card for the deck. 4 copies of Bounding Krasis in the deck. Bounding Krasis is awesome. We can either untap one of our own guys, put him back on defense, or, very likely, we will tap one of their guys down when they declare their attack step. If they declare attackers, or declare attack step, and then you play your Bounding Krasis, tap a guy down, he's effectively removed from combat, and you've got a fat blocker, too. So Bounding Krasis is pretty darn good. Or, again, with all these guys, you just flash it in at the end of their turn, and then swing for 3 when you untap and draw a card. So, yeah, Bounding Krasis, man. He's, again, just a dream creature for the deck. A 3-mana, 3/3 body is already good. Plus flash is what the deck wants, and that extra ability is like, it's delicious gravy. 3 copies of Silumgar Sorcerer in the deck, a counterspell, basically. Where, like I said, we're playing 14 counterspell type effects. This definitely factors in. Often will exploit itself, yes, but gets rid of really problematic creatures. And yeah, you can't play it till the 3rd turn, but that's still going to allow you to take out a lot of important cards in the format. If you're on the play, you can take out a Manus Rider. Any other time, you can take out Siege Rhino, Reality Smasher, Thought Knot Seer, any of the big old drowsy, really, and lots of other stuff, too. So, Kalitas, I like Silumgar Sorcerer an awful lot. Takes out a lot of the top-end threats, counterspells them, that we see on the 3rd, 4th, 5th turn. So, yeah, I like Sorcerer. 3 copies of Void Grafter to finish off the creatures. I'm counting this as a counterspell type effect too. It effectively is. Newer players, that's how the stack works. If they target one of your guys with a removal spell, you can always play Void Grafter on the stack above it. It resolves first. Give the creature they've targeted hexproof. That spell will not take effect. It'll just go to the graveyard. That does work. Many players know that, but I've got newer players subscribed to my channel, so I want to say things like this so that they know. But Void Grafter, again, I'm counting it as a counterspell. It counters a lot of stuff, you know. Fiery Impulse, Wild Slash, Ruinous Pass, Spatial Contortion, Grasp of Darkness, Ultimate Price, a million different things. So very, very good card so far in testing. I've liked Void Grafter a lot. Not quite as much as Sorcerer, but still very fine card, and it's a great blocker too. Into the spells, we're also playing 18 spells. I like that parity between the creatures and the spells there. But we're playing, and I can go through these pretty quickly because we're playing like sort of chunks of ideas here. You know, what are our counters and what are our removal? What draws us cards? And which is very much like a control deck in its philosophy there. So let me give you the counter spells we're playing, and I'm going to go to the graphic to do so here. We're playing 1 copy of Dispel in the deck, the lowest card cost that we're playing here. 3 copies of Clash of Wills. 1 copy of Disdainful Stroke and 2 copies of Skatter to the Winds. That's a lot of cards on screen at the same time, so I'll run through. Dispel is just a great card in the format. Counters a lot of removal against our guys. Also, you know, commands and charms, just very important cards in the format. And I'd like to run 2, possibly, but I haven't decided yet here. 3 copies of Clash of Wills is really to cover our turn 2. That's very, very important to us. Although we do have something like 22 different turn 2 plays. So we've got a lot of options. But Clash of Wills effectively counters everything they could play on the second turn. And we need that because our removal is present, but it's not amazing removal. We've got 1 copy of Disdainful Stroke that counters like Siege Rhino, Ojutai's Command, most Rally the Ancestors, and a lot of other stuff. So Disdainful Stroke has been amazing. And like Big Eldrazi, stuff like that. It's really, really good card. And the Skatter of the Winds just counters everything. And it feels like another flash creature to me, you know. We can play it in response to something, make a guy, counter a spell. That's great for a deck that is essentially a flash deck. So that's all of our counter spells here. That is 8 just natural counter spells, and then basically 6 creatures that act as counter spells. So that's a lot of counter magic. The reason we're playing so much counter magic is that the colors green and blue are sort of thin on quality removal, which we need in a control deck. But we have some removal elements that we can use here that are available to us, and I'm going to go to the graphic for that again. We've got 4 copies of Spatial Contortion in the deck. We've got 2 copies of Disperse and 2 copies of Reality Shift. Disperse I do count as removal. You know, it removes a guy for a turn, and it usually keeps a guy from attacking. You know, they swing in, you disperse it. It can also take care of things that aren't creatures, obviously enchantments, planeswalkers, which can be very important, and it can also return guys to our own hand if they're somehow in danger. When we return things to their hand with Disperse, we can then counter them a lot of the times when they go to play them again. So Disperse is just an all-around good card. Spatial Contortion, we do have 10 different ways of getting colorless mana in the mana base. So it's a fairly reliable card, and Spatial Contortion has been fan-freaking-tastic. Again, I talked about this with Clash of Wills. We need something to cover our turn 2 so that we just don't get, run over. Because turn 2 is a very important turn. And although we have a lot of plays on it, we need to cover it as best we can because these colors just, in this deck philosophy, just isn't great at doing that right now. So Spatial Contortion has been absolutely fantastic and takes out pretty much anything that they could possibly play on the second turn and even their third turn a lot of the time. And finally, Reality Shift has been good like it always is when I play it. I don't know why more people don't play Reality Shift. I think the card's fine. Takes care of Hangerback Walker for literally ever, and sure, they get to manifest the top card, but I'm not really that concerned in this deck with that. We have ways of blocking, we have ways of getting rid of it. I'm not that concerned, and a lot of times in this format they will manifest a card they can never flip up, which is actually better in some ways. If we hit like a Kolaghan's Command or something, they have to manifest a Kolaghan's Command, then they can never flip that up, they can never play it, that's pretty good. Also in a format with, Den Protector, Tassiger, cards like that, I like something that just removes cards from the game completely and entirely, so yes to Reality Shift, it's been good. And finally, to finish off the main deck, we have to play some cards that draw us cards. It's important to have card advantage. 2 copies of Anticipate, which is card selection, really. And then 1 copy of Treasure Cruise, which is straight-up card advantage. Cruise is the only sorcery speed, just non-instant speed card in the entire deck. But it's usually just going to cost you 1 and 2 mana. 18 spells is an awful lot. So we got a lot of stuff going to the graveyard, and we are playing Evolving Wilds in the deck. So that's another thing that goes to the graveyard easily. Very easy to hit that 1 Treasure Cruise for just the 1 mana. Drawing 3 is ridiculous. And we were also playing the 2 Anticipate, obviously. I love Anticipate too. That's another card I wish people played more copies of, because Anticipate's great. 4th, 5th turn, we can Anticipate at the end of their turn, hit one of our creatures and play it, a Dimensional Infiltrator or anything that costs 3 by the 5th turn. So that's really good. We can Anticipate in response to a spell, digging to find a counterspell that counters it. Yes, that works too, newer players. So Anticipate's just been fantastic. I've always loved this card. And here are the lands right here. Like I said earlier, 10 different ways of producing colorless mana. And I do want to go in a very, very short aside here. When I did the Eldrazi Displacer Infinite Combo video, there's a lot of people in the comments that don't quite yet understand exactly how that diamond symbol works. They think that it's a completely new type of mana. It's not. That diamond symbol is just colorless mana. So any card that taps for colorless mana or produces colorless mana, i.e. Scions, or in this case Yavimaya Coast, produces the mana needed to pay that diamond symbol. Diamond symbol and colorless mana are the same thing. I'll leave you a little link to Mark Rosewater's Tumblr post in the description if you want to check that out. But yeah, if anybody tells you that you can't use, Evolving or Yavimaya Coast to pay for, say, a Spatial Contortion, they are wrong. They are very, very wrong. Aside from that, I don't have to explain too much. Lumbering Falls is an obvious card. Yavimaya Coast is obvious. Just everything makes perfect sense, right? And here's the sideboard right here. There's Vow Redeemer. I know there's probably people like, Vow Redeemer! Yeah, there's Vow Redeemer right there against the Mass Removal and stuff. They're a fairly important card against certain decks. Displacement Wave against all the tokens decks that we see in the format right now. There's a rising tide of tokens decks, and this takes out all the tokens very, very well. Warping Wail, pretty obvious. Again, kills Jace, that's cool. And sorcery speed things, Mass Removal, yet another tool against that. And Encase in Ice, I almost put in a 1-of in the main deck. Encase in Ice is that good. There are a lot of, colorless creatures floating around in the format, and, this doesn't take out Jace or anything, doesn't tap it down. But against the decks that we really care about having to beat, we have bad matchups against the Tarka aggro a lot. We really need to be able to do more things against that deck. Although we do play a decent tempo game against it, we need to have a few more options. And Encase in Ice is a great option against that deck. Also takes out, Siege Rhino, Manus Rider, there's a lot of things it takes out, so I love Encase. And here are your power rankings. Here a fairly solid score for a budget deck of 60 points. 60 points is fine for a deck that's just going to cost you like 20 bucks. I think it's like $20 or $25 on TCG Player right now, something like that. And most of that cost is in the land base. The land base can cost as much as like $10. That's almost half of the deck there. So, if you wanted to throw in, Islands and Forests instead of Lumbering Falls, you could probably pull that off and end up paying way less. So, yeah, 60 is not bad. We're fairly versatile. We've got good defense and fair to middling offense. But you notice most of our stats are either average or just north of average. Only one category here is not a 5 or a 6. And that's because the deck is very middle of the road, and it's kind of hard to evaluate, It's got at least some of everything in the deck. There's some defense, there's some offense. There's a very, very middle ground deck here. And I'll say this, the first time you pick up this deck and shuffle it up and play it, it's going to seem weird the first few games, but you get used to piloting it. And this is the kind of deck that is very, very skill intensive, so you have to play a few games with it before you really start realizing what you're supposed to do. The deck has a lot of different options on any given turn. Should I counter a guy? Should I play a creature? Should I wait to play this creature? Should I block now? There's a lot of different options and avenues, and so it, like I said, rewards a lot of playtime. That's all I got for now. Sleeve that up, take it to F&M, not going to cost you that much, and it's definitely a deck for a certain kind of player. You're not totally an aggro player, you're not totally a control player, that's a little boring and slow, aggro's a little too, cut and dried for you. All that makes sense. This deck is very, very complex, so let me know how you feel about it, because I actually think that it's, it's got potential. It definitely does. But that being said, what are we doing next time? I should probably do an Eldrazi deck next time. I haven't decided on which one because I got like 4 that I'm cooking up. So let me know what you want to see even outside of Eldrazi, and I'll get to work on it because I'm working on a million different things. I should probably do like the top 10 upcoming decks like I always do, But I haven't gotten around to it because I've been really actually trying to get these out here for you guys. So if you enjoy the content that I put up for everybody, hit the thumbs up button. Just like it, share it. That's important to me. Comment, because that's even more important to me. And then sub if you're new or if you just haven't done that yet. I've been watching like a bunch of YouTube channels that I still haven't subscribed to either. I watch like every scary story from Reddit reading channel while I'm editing these videos. I haven't subscribed to any of them, so I understand not subscribing to a channel that you watch all the time, but it would really mean a lot to me if you did. That'd be awesome. Anyway, I'm Dev from SBMTG, and like always, thanks for watching, my wizards.